Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you some steps you can take to make sure that you can create in 30 minutes or less. Let's get started. So step number one, use magazine pictures. Rip them out, rip out the pages, have them at the ready. You don't have to stamp or stencil. Step two, use collage papers. And when I say collage papers, existing scrapbook papers, gel prints, masterboards that you have. Now you're just going to match your focal image to a background that goes. It doesn't have to be the perfect background because you're going to add to it, but what it's going to do is set the color scheme, point you in a direction, one less decision to make. So here I'm just flipping through these gel prints that I created in a recent video using some DIY mark makers, and I'll link that video. And I'm just looking for some, her dress is navy, so I'm looking for something that's going to coordinate with that navy. I'm flipping through about under 10 of these gel prints, eliminating the ones that I know are a miss, and then just going through this. You don't want to overthink this process. Go with your gut instinct. If you want some help, take pictures of the focal image in front of the background to help you decide. Sometimes if you see it from afar, it's an easier pick. So I'm just kind of eliminating some, then I eliminated a few more. I'm down to 3. I'm looking to see, how does it look? Which orientation? So I'm down to 2, so here's where I might take a picture of both of these. Either way, by starting with a focal image that you don't have to stamp or stencil or cut out or water cut, saves time, and you jumpstart the background with a background. I like the colors here, so I am just going to tape off the edge of this paper. I also take my mixed media pad, I take it off the coil so I can work flat. This makes it so much easier and saves me time. I'm cutting off the excess of the gel print here, and I'm going to glue it down, and I'm going to use some matte medium. Now this is kind of past its prime, it's the end of it, so I'm adding a little bit of water here just to make it so I can use this up. I'm going to put a good coat of this on the mixed media paper, and because I'm using a gel print and I'm collaging the entire background with this, I don't have to spend time gessoing the paper. So again, we've saved some time here. Now this video I've kept in real time because I wanted to prove that I did create under 30 minutes. The other thing that I'm doing is I'm picking colors that I love, that are in my happy zone. Then I don't have to think too hard. I know how they work together. Use the brayer to make sure you've got good adherence. Check to see that everything is glued down. And you will give this a little bit of drying time, but because it's mostly underneath, I save drying time as well, and that streamlines the creative process. I'm just wrapping my paintbrush with the matte medium in a saran wrap so it doesn't dry, because I know I'm going to be gluing down the focal image and a sentiment later on, and I don't need to wash it out. Cutting out the excess, again making sure, no, I'm not going to throw this away. I'm going to use this. That's going to find its way as a starter on another page. So now I need to decide on the orientation. Am I going portrait? Am I going landscape? I tend to prefer landscape orientation. Now there's a little bit of white along the edges, so I'm just taking a little bit of that quinacridone magenta, which is the pink color, and just colorizing that just to get rid of the white. I'm not worried about it, so if you've got a gel print or scrapbook paper that doesn't quite go to the end, just add a little bit of color. And this will take it right to the end. Now remember, that gel print that I use, or scrapbook paper, or whatever you've used, is the beginning layers of your background. That doesn't mean that you can't add to it, and I'm going to add to it, but I'm not changing or adding colors. I'm going to use the white, the pink, and the Prussian blue. That was determined by the gel print. Having those decisions made saves me time. I'm using this Peacock Feathers stencil, and I'm just going to randomly place it around with white paint. Now, some places are more opaque, some places are less opaque. I just want to add some movement, lighten up the background a little bit, and just add some interest, because a mixed media background, art journaling background, is all about those layers. I'm not even worried about making this perfect stenciling. I like the randomness of it. And I chose this Peacock Feathers stencil because when you look at the focal image, she's got those kind of marks, cutouts on the lace part of her sleeve, and it kind of mirrors that. So I always look for stencils that somehow coordinate or tie into the focal image, and that will make your page more cohesive. I hope you can see how adding these feathers has added so much movement to the back of the background. And using white really just makes it pop. Got an open area here. I keep putting back my focal image. That's just helping me figure out, where do I want the focal image? So by the time it's time to glue it down, I have a better idea. Sometimes I don't know exactly where it's going until further along, once the background is done. Now I have this coffee filter, which I cut out a circle. That went for another mixed media project. This was sitting on my desk and I just happened to see it. And I've got some of that is in the background, some of that teal turquoise color. And I thought, well, what if I put this here? Oh, well, that makes for an interesting combination. So layering up your collage papers, again, this is already done. We're using stuff in our stash. And then the sentiment will go here. That makes for an interesting composition. Wasn't part of my original thought process. So you can even, when you only have or only want to use 30 minutes, you can use stuff that's right close. You're not going to go to the filing cabinet. You're not going to go and start searching for things. Limit yourself to what you can see from your craft table. Sometimes we have so many options that we get bogged down with that. So if we want to create quickly, limit yourself. Here I'm using this diamond plate stencil to add some of that Prussian blue into the background, knock back some of those feathers, just adding one more layer to the background. So just adding this Prussian blue, tying in with the focal image. Her dress is navy, although it doesn't look, I don't know if you can tell that it's navy. And I've added those teal. So teal, quinacridone magenta, and Prussian blue, winning color combination. I know those colors work together. That's why I've chosen them. It's just easy decision making. So when I'm looking at magazines, I just rip out the pages. If there's an interesting expression, I take out a lot of the models and things. They make perfect additions to art journal pages. So now I just want to add a little bit more interest to the coffee filter. So I'm going to do some of the same stenciling on the coffee filter. Again, same colors. It's going to look slightly different because it's a different material. And you'll see this coffee filter is even ripped. Doesn't matter. When you glue it down, it's all good. You really save time when art journaling, using existing collage papers. You're getting out less paint, which means less cleanup, which saves time. Now I'm going to add some magenta onto that coffee filter. And I'm going to use the center of this flower. So look at your stencils. You don't have to have, I'm not using the flower part of this, but I'm using the center part. So there could be part of it there that's just going to work for you. If you've never used coffee filters as collage papers, I encourage you to try. And I'll link a video where I show how I make designer coffee filters. Here I'm kind of adding to it in the moment on the page, but on that video I get a lot of the coffee filters ready to be collage papers. I just work my way around, just adding layers to it. And I'm, again, playing with the composition. I haven't decided yet where it's all going, but it's going to all go. Now, the other thing that can save time is I have sentiments in those plastic pockets. Once I print them out, I print out a whole sheet, then the rest sit there. And that's where I go when I'm looking for a sentiment. I'm using stuff in my stash that's already printed out, so I don't have to take time, go to my computer, type out a sentiment. I can just flip through and find one that works. I decided I wanted to add just a little bit of white to the coffee filter. Remember, we had white in the background. So what's your favorite color combo? Are you like me with the pink, the turquoise, and the blue? Are you in the warm color zone? The orange and reds and yellows? So again, I've used 3 stencils on this, but I've used the same stencils and I've used the same colors. Limit your choices. Less to clean up, less to put away. And suddenly I decide I'm going to put it on the other side. Was never an option, but that's what I end up going with. And I've picked out 2 sentiments that I might use. This one's a little bit longer, so I actually end up using the other one because it's shorter. But both of them go with the expression of the girl. So when I'm ripping out those magazine pictures, I'm looking at the expression and I'm thinking, okay, what could they be saying? Could they be saying something that I would be adding as a sentiment? So now that I have finalized where this is going, I'm just going to bend this back. I want a straight edge at the top because that's where I've got the tape and I don't want to go over the tape at the top. I want a straight edge at the top. On the bottom I can cut it off if there's any excess, so I'm not worried about that. And once I finalize the positioning, I'm going to glue this down with fluid matte medium. Position it, flip it up, keep it in place, and apply the fluid matte medium. And then I'll go on top of the coffee filter as well. You can see how shiny the magazine picture is. Like most of them, they're very glossy. The fluid matte medium really dulls that shine. I do have close-up pictures of the finished page at the end. I'm just going to cut off the excess. All those pieces are going to find their way. I'm going to glue them down onto a page. And I'm just going to edge this with the Prussian blue. I have it on the makeup sponge, so I might as well do it right now. I wanted to get rid of some of the white, so I'm cutting apart the sentiment and playing with the orientation. But you can save time by leaving it as the full rectangle. You can give it a wash of color, make it pink underneath, and that'll save time. And again, you can rearrange the letters, the words, however you like them, take pictures to see which orientation you like better. Inevitably, I tend to spend way too much time doing this. And I left it in because we all get caught in that, is this better or this better, and that indecision. I wasn't kidding when I said how long I take rearranging and rearranging. So once I finalize that, I glue it down with my fluid matte medium. I usually leave the ones in place and take out one at a time and glue it down. That way you get that positioning that you wanted. Again, using digital sentiments that I've stamped or I've printed off that I have at the ready saves time, as opposed to now getting out a sentiment stamp, stamping it on paper, cutting it out. This just makes it a little more streamlined. And again, I limit myself to what's there. I hadn't edged all of it, so I just grabbed my Prussian blue makeup sponge that had the Prussian blue in it, and I'm just going around the edge and ready to do the finishing. The majority of the page is done, and we're about 25 minutes in. Part of finishing is adding some shading. This just adds definition. It's going to bring out the circle shape. It's going to bring out the focal image. I'm using my angle brush and a little bit of black acrylic paint. And I'm using the shading technique. that I typically use. Now I find this really easy and it's permanent because it's acrylic paint. Once it's dry, it's permanent. But you can use Stabilo All Pencil, just draw the line and activate it. You can use ink pencils or blocks. Just know your medium. Right now I'm not putting any, this is the last thing that I'm doing, I'm not adding any wet medium, so I could get away with the Stabilo All Pencil or a charcoal pencil for this, because it's not going to reactivate. And it's my art journal page and I don't varnish it. Adding the shading around the edge just frames our page. And you can go back and add more if you want a little bit bolder. So now I'm going to do the same shading on the circle, and it's going to make that circular shape stand out, become part of the focal image really. And I love how that circle shape really serves as a backdrop for the sentiment. And I'm going on the outside over top of the coffee filter, just to make a double wide shading around that circle. And then I'm going to shade around the focal image. This is kind of standard issue finishing. Shade around the focal image to make it stand out, shade around the edge to frame the page. Old enough to know better, too young to care. Oh, old enough to know better, too old to care. It's adding a little bit of highlights, shading in their hair. Then I grab my Sakura gel pen, Jelly Roll 10. It has a 10 on it. This one, I believe, is permanent and it's wide, so you get a very opaque coverage. It's my favorite white because it is permanent. It's taken me a while to find it and to get the opaque one. You could use a Posca pen. It's a little bit wider. And I'm just putting a line and a dot dot. Adding a little bit of white. And I'll do that around the page, the border page as well. And since I've put the black shading there, this just stands out all the more. If you've used charcoal or Stabilo, it will absorb into the white and may make it less bright white. So, warning about that. This is why I like using all acrylic paints or all things that are permanent, because it just makes life easier. And I don't, one less thing to have to think about or worry about or plan around. If you've enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up, share this with your creative friends. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe and be sure to click on the bell and select the option to be notified of upcoming videos. If you are a subscriber, thanks so much for coming back. Check that bell to make sure that you're going to be notified of upcoming videos. That way you won't miss any, you'll see it come up in your feed and you'll be able to decide, hey, yes, that's something that I want to watch. It also helps me grow my channel. Here I grabbed my Posca pen in black and I'm just going to go around the sentiment. So as we are wrapping up and getting ready to show some of the close-ups of the page, thank you again for joining me. Until next time, go get creative.